Greetings and salutations, imagination connoisseurs of all shapes, sizes, colors, creeds, whatever you identify with. You're welcome here. This is the Post-Geek Singularity community for all of you imagination connoisseurs, and it is I, the sanctimoniously notorious RMB, here for who would have thought when I started this so long ago, we would be at live chat number 145 with over 500,000 views. Certainly not me. The only people that have made that possible is you, and I want to thank you for that. I also want to thank Lucky Tiger men's grooming products for those men who want to look good and feel great. They bring you these podcasts so you can enjoy them. And of course, you can go to their website at getluckytiger.com and you can buy their cool products. And if you do and you check out, you can punch in PGS for Post-Geek Singularity, and you, as you all know, get 20% off your entire order. You also might want to check out clubluckytiger.com, which is running a cool sweepstakes where you can, win free stuff, which is always good. Now, today, I've got so many letters. I got so much good stuff to share with you. Yes, I've got letters from Willow Yang, a letter from Willow Yang that is outstanding, but somebody who's become one of my favorite letter writers, I have pretty much everybody who writes me letters is becoming a favorite of mine because you all write such different letters. And I want to remind you, if you want to send me letters, please go to the Burnettwork.net website. It's also a place, instead of Patreon, you can go and support this channel. And we're making it more interactive all the time. As a matter of fact, our 3-word movie reviews are taking off. That's right. If you want to write a 3-word movie review, you are encouraged to do so. People are starting to write in. It's going to catch on. We're going to make it a thing. Fetch never caught on, but the 3-word movie review absolutely will. Brought to you by Paul in Long Beach, who has written this first letter. And I have to say, Paul, you never cease to make me chuckle. This letter... This letter comes from Paul in Long Beach. And what's really interesting is he used to say that his name was Paul in LB. Now he's writing out Long Beach, which, I appreciate. So here, without further ado, Paul from Long Beach. Rob, I'd like to begin this by wishing Willow the happiest of belated birthdays. You are a gem, Miss Yang. I did not know it was Willow's birthday. I would have given her a special Robservations 21 phaser salute. So everyone, say happy birthday to Willow Yang. I guess she got to spend her birthday in Boston, which is pretty cool. Beyond that, allow me to piggyback on Rob's statement on the fact that Kathleen Kennedy doesn't need my defense or Rob's. Last week, I wrote a missive to my new Padawan, Jason. I attempted to give a history lesson to this gentleman. Apparently, this history lesson wasn't actually listened to by some members of the Post-Geek Singularity. Exactly 30 years ago, in 1989, Star Wars was dead. As someone who stated that they saw the film in a theater, my only assumption is that you were aware of this fact. After the Droids cartoon and Caravan of Courage, please explain to me how Kathleen Kennedy ruined Star Wars. Surely, if that doesn't convince you, then re-listen to Disco Star Wars and explain to me how this was Kathleen Kennedy's fault. Now, Paul, I gotta back up right there. If you're referring to Miko's Disco Star Wars album, I gotta stop you right there because that was awesome. But perhaps you and I aren't in agreement of that, but it was. Now, since I'm positive neither of those will convince you how wrong you are, then I openly dare every single listener to this podcast, after Rob is finished, to look up Star Wars Donnie and Marie show, and then look me in the eye and tell me how that abomination is Kathleen Kennedy's fault. The dichotomy of most of these arguments is what fascinates me the most, because intellectually, they make no logical sense. If George Lucas raped your childhood, then Kathleen Kennedy didn't ruin Star Wars. If Kathleen Kennedy ruined Star Wars, then George Lucas didn't rape your childhood. Make up your minds, people. You can't have it both ways. I finished my letter to Jason with an analogy. If you didn't get it, your loss. Some people will be remembered as Obi-Wans. Some people will be remembered as Anakins. With all due respect, in the long run, the Phantom Menace will be remembered as Anakins, just like the George Lucas raped my childhood morons are thought of now, almost 20 years later, as privileged pieces of Gilbert's feces. On a side note, exactly where can I get a Tears of the Fanboy coffee cup? I will drink from it with a smile, then openly mock you because you don't get the joke. Excuse me for this quick note, Rob. Someone had to respond to the idiocy that is being spewed. Fact is, I have tea time at 10:30, and as Nancy would say, priorities, Bobby. Priorities. Cheers, Paul. Well, as you might imagine, I was just tickled to death by Paul's letter. I can't get... Uh-oh. See? Can't get enough. Gilbert's always... Oh, that's probably... You know what? Every time I go on, Gilbert's sleeping, and then I think the landscapers come. What a bummer. What can I tell you? Anyway... which brings me to a letter from another longtime listener and member of the Post-Geek Singularity community, which brings me to the topic of today, which is Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel, starring, of course, Brie Larson. And this, my friends, is the Best Buy exclusive steelbook that I pre-ordered right when the movie came out, I think, along with the Avengers Endgame steelbook. I don't remember. But I went to pick it up on Tuesday when I received an missive from Best Buy saying it was in. You know, I'm not even a big steelbook collector, but for some reason, I don't know, I wanted to get the Endgame steelbook because I have the Infinity War steelbook and this was here and it seemed like something good to do at the time. Now I want to go on record. I liked Captain Marvel. Did I think it was top tier MCU? No. But I really enjoyed it. And I think that I understood why. You know, Brie Larson won an Academy Award for starring in Room, which is a tremendous film, and she was tremendous in it. So the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Kevin Feige, in his infinite wisdom, goes out and hires one of the most capable actresses working in film today, Brie Larson. Brie Larson has been working on her career for the better part of her life. Now, I don't have a problem with Brie Larson as a person. I've never met her. I've seen her say nothing that was that objectionable, except, you know, want to see different points of view from people. I don't have a problem with that. Yet I've watched a lot of online vitriol that is personally attacking her. You know, I've heard it all. But I really enjoyed Captain Marvel. I enjoyed her performance in it. And I liked the fact, most of all, that it was a movie that had a very indie sensibility. If it wasn't a superhero movie, and let's just say it was about a woman who had lost her memory and she was trying to figure out who she was. And she was basically a white supremacist because after all, in the beginning of the movie, basically Carol Danvers, not knowing she's Carol Danvers, is a Nazi. She's a space Nazi. And over the course of the movie, over the course of her relationships with other people, because so far all the relationships that she has are the only things that define her, because she doesn't know any better. And throughout the course of the film, she learns about more and more about herself through her relationships with other people, whether they're good relationships or bad relationships or relationships that are founded on misinformation. And she kind of discovers who she is. I thought this was an interesting, refreshing take on the MCU and specifically a superheroic character. I enjoyed the film. It was different. Like all of the MCU movies, I like the fact that they change up the kind of movies they are. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, here is Gilbert. So anyway, as I talk, I think that, you know, it's always a part of the show when Gilbert and Tallulah are now here that they get a cookie. And I will keep talking. Tallulah's here. Let's see if you can see her. I don't know. Can you get up here, Tallulah? Do you want to get up here? Anyway, since they're here, they're almost making this like it is. I didn't even have to cue them. They just show up. They know that I'm talking. You going to come up? You want to come up? Oh, see, Tallulah's so obedient, she sits down. Maybe Gilbert will get up. Do you want to get up? All right, they're both sitting down. So I'm just going to feed them both. It's a bummer because then you don't get to hear them chew. And I really love hearing them chew. But anyway, so that's how I kind of feel about Captain Marvel. I was happy to own it and proud to add it to my Marvel. I'm going to feed them behind my back. I was proud to add it to my collection of the MCU discs. But anyway, Jeff T. Hudick, a longtime Imagination Connoisseur, is here with some thoughts. So he writes, "Hello, Rob. I'm writing this email because I want to share a recent experience. Yesterday, I received my Captain Marvel 4K Steelbook from Best Buy. I was and am overjoyed about it. I love collecting this stuff. Something rather confusing and slightly upsetting happened. However, when I shared news of this event on some online blogs I follow, I was, for lack of a better word, attacked for being a social justice warrior and a fool for not only liking Captain Marvel, but for buying the 4K Blu-ray. Here are some notes from a few of the anonymous people who attacked me. Brie Larson hates men, white men in particular. By buying a Captain Marvel Blu-ray, you are celebrating her behavior and her cruel words about men. Here's another gem. You effing shill. You are an asshole for buying that disc and an idiot for even mentioning it. You're obviously a social justice warrior and have shitty taste in movies. What a fucking piece of shit that movie is. Really, you're an idiot." Well, I too bought Captain Marvel, the 4K Blu-ray, unapologetically, and I enjoyed it. And by the way, it looks great. I make no apologies. You get the drift. Now, mind you, the blogs I share this information on were blogs about movies and comic books, which, for the most part, have been free of such tripe in the past. I suppose I was being naive not to see this coming, but I was rather taken aback by it. This reminds me very much of the crap you've been getting in the comments sections of your videos about your opinion on Kathleen Kennedy. The amount of deeply rooted rage and vitriol that is out there over things like this, I find to be very disquieting. It isn't enough for people to have differing opinions on movies or those involved in making them. Nope. It seems to be important for some, far too many actually, to hate certain movies and to hate even more than those who make them. These same individuals then spread their hatred for certain movies and those who made them onto those who are so bold as to say they like them. It's as if there is some sort of war going on that these people feel they simply must win by crushing all those who disagree with them under their metaphorical boot heel. We live in a shaky, rocky environment where things as simple as movies give freeway to people who express deeply seated rage towards others who are not in agreement with them about movies. In my opinion, there's more going on here than meets the eye. What exactly, I don't know. But I've never felt the need to destroy people who don't like the things I do with a hurricane-like rage. Never. However, there are far too many who do feel the need to do this, and they do it mostly anonymously, online, and without a single thought for the damage their vitriol may be causing to others. For the record, I'm not a fan of the Star Wars sequels. In particular, I was deeply disappointed by The Last Jedi. However, at no time have I felt rage toward Kathleen Kennedy or those who are making these movies. There is a changing and growing demographic of people that filmmakers are trying to reach in order to continue to make their films profitable. If this bothers some people, well, don't watch the movies you don't like. Do something else with your time. I love the geek life and the geek culture. I want more of it. And I want it to continue to take risks, grow, and entertain me. For the vast large part, I'm very happy with the wondrous world of geek culture we live in today. I just sincerely hope that those who find it necessary to stomp out those they dislike with their rage and hatred find something else to do, and soon they are pooping all over my fun. Thanks for having such a positive and insightful channel, Rob, where all are welcome and where people behave respectfully toward each other whilst chatting. It is truly a much-needed breath of fresh air in today's world. Sincerely, Jeff T. Hudick. Well, Jeff, first of all, I want to thank you for being a participant here at the Post-Geek Singularity, because you've written me letters before, and they're always thoughtful and worth reading. And I felt I wanted to share this. I mean, I'll be honest. I put up this Captain Marvel thumbnail, and I decided to read your letter, to showcase your letter, because I wanted people to come to the channel. I want my channel to grow. I want more subscribers. I want more super chats. I want more people to come and build a community, because frankly, I'm sick and tired of living in a world where people aren't taking us all forward And the fan community needs that. And I'm not saying I do not have any kind of messianic delusions of grandeur. All I want to do is be the way I've been my entire life, which is share my love of all the cool stuff that we have available to us. And there's more of it than ever before. I mean, there's channels of there's a Japan. I think he's Japanese. There's a guy on. He's a model builder, and the guy is an expert model builder, and he builds. It's like Junik or something like that. I just sit there and watch mesmerized, whether he's building a Lamborghini Aventador or whether he's building a Gundam model. This guy is so world class. He's so good at what he does that I sit and marvel. I'll watch a 50-minute video he puts up just where he's painting his model kits. The guy is a Rembrandt of Gundam Gunpla. And I sit there and I think to myself, I watch these channels. I watched like 2 hours of him painting models yesterday. And I'm like, we live in a world where, to me, I guess it's like watching somebody play video games, but I get so many ideas about how to build models. And as you know, I've got a bunch of unbuilt models here. I've got 3 in particular I want to make. But I live in a world where I can click onto YouTube and I can watch a master class on basically model kit painting. And I think to myself, this is amazing. It's amazing. Then I can go watch some, buxom girl, Gunpla Melly. There's a girl I would love to have met if I was 20 who basically has a Gundam channel where she too, she's always got cleavage, I'll give her that. But she has a love of Gundam. She does Gundam kit reviews. She's got a pretty good DTOF Gundam display. She just came back from Japan. So I can literally, if I want, spend hours going down the rabbit hole about Gundam models and model kits that I love, based on content that people are providing to me from all over the world that I don't have to pay for, and they spend a lot of time making it, and it's wonderful. I feel the same way about all the movies that we're getting down the pike. Like, I don't necessarily love them all. You don't have to love everything, but you have to give it up for the fact that there's a lot of time and effort and a lot of work that goes into things that even aren't so great. Yes, even Star Trek Discovery. It's not like the people that are making Star Trek Discovery don't want to give you a good show. They do. They just don't know how to produce or write Star Trek. Now, people could say that about Kathleen Kennedy as well. They can say that about Brie Larson. But the problem is, here's the way I see it, is that none of these things that you might dislike, if The Last Jedi is not your cup of tea, if Captain Marvel is not your cup of tea, if Brie Larson isn't your cup of tea, and let's face it, have you seen her? Did you see her in the dress she was wearing, like at the world premiere of Captain Marvel? Why wouldn't Brie Larson be anyone's cup of tea? No matter who you are, man, woman, non-binary, who knows if you had 10 genders. I think you couldn't look at Brie Larson in a dress and not at least be appreciative. And I just don't understand why. I mean, I used to watch a lot of movies I would say were garbage, but I watched any science fiction, fantasy, and horror film when I was growing up, even just movies like Invasion of the Star Creatures, which was terrible. But I would watch it and I would find something to like. Like, I would never like pillory a movie. I look for something I enjoyed, something. I mean, now as I've gotten older, I do get a little angry. I understand where people are coming from, that they grew up with Star Wars. Star Wars is their jam, and they have to watch what they think is subpar Star Wars. It's painful. But as I've said before, I grew up watching subpar movies in the Planet of the Apes franchise and certainly in the James Bond franchise. But I learned growing up that some of my favorite franchises would also deliver movies that weren't good. But I didn't understand the business economics of how the law of diminishing returns and how the Planet of the Apes franchise went from being this amazing science fiction film about the social order and the times, which is the first Planet of the Apes, to being basically a kid's movie, even though it still had those resonating themes, even in Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Can't we all just get along? Which is basically where it descended to. And even as a kid, I realized, they don't have very much money to make this, but I did like Battle for the Planet of the Apes. And, the Bond franchise, the same thing. I was just happy to get more movies in the franchise. And then when they do the Go Ape, every weekday they would show a Planet of the Apes movie. It'd be a Go Apes festival. And the best ones first. But you'd still watch all 5. And it was fun. I kind of think that again, I don't understand the anger. I really don't. Like I think it's great that I can watch a channel like Gunpla Melly, who I wouldn't have thought 10 years ago I would see a girl that looked like her be as knowledgeable about painting Gundam models, and she knows her stuff. She reviews kits. 10 years ago, I don't think she would have been doing this. And now she has a venue to do this, just as well as I think it's Plamo. There's a guy named Plamo who's a model kit builder. I think he's Spanish. I think. Go look at his build of an Imperial Star Destroyer. I know I'm on model kits today, but the fact that we can watch these things, it's amazing. And you know, it just fuels the fact that I have a 3-foot Star Destroyer model that remains unbuilt in the downstairs basement. I bought it like 10 years ago. It's made by a guy named Randy Cooper. If you want to see some cool model kits that you can get, go to Randy Cooper. I don't know what his website is, but Randy Cooper is amazing. I have a Star Trek, an original series shuttlecraft model that's about this big. I've got a Blade Runner spinner that's about this big, and Star Destroyer model that's about this big that I bought from him. We have all this. I mean, if you don't like something, there's 10 more things following behind it that you can like. We have an adaptation of Good Omens that's on TV right now. Who would have thought? It's amazing. It exists. You can watch it all. And I don't understand. I don't get where the anger has come from. Like, I really don't. To me, it's my love of genre literature came out of books, and it came out before it was movies and media. I love science fiction books. I mean, I did love Star Trek first. And one of the things I always wanted when I was a kid is like, girls. My love of Star Trek and my love of girls went hand in hand. I mean, studying Captain Kirk, you know, led me to having girlfriends when I was 13. That's what you wanted, to boldly go where you'd never gone before. And I just don't understand. It's so weird. Like what Brie Larson never said anything that egregious. And it's like, really, men, guys, it's not like we haven't had dominance over the human race for, the last 10,000 years. I think we're able to take a few insults, as Kirk might have pointed out. Trouble with tribbles, aren't we? I don't know. Anyway, I am a proud fan of Captain Marvel. I enjoy the MCU, and I especially like Brie Larson, despite the fact that she might have said things like, wow, are you personally really threatened when Brie Larson says she'd like to see anybody other than 40-year-old white men writing movie reviews or at press junkets? To tell you the truth, I would too. The more different kinds of people we get at press junkets, the more different kinds of questions they'll ask to the celebrities that they're going to be questioning, which is going to lead to more questions and more insight into who they are. And that can only be a better thing. So, you know, that's where I'm coming from. Let's see who is here today. Factual Opinion is here with his Dr. Manhattan avatar. He says, my second favorite episode of TOS is Patterns of Force. Patterns of Force is a great episode. It's, of course, for people that don't know, the Nazi episode that is all about the planets Echos and Zeon, and which is interesting because the principality of Zeon is Gundam. Zeon is the planet from Patterns of Force. And it's very interesting. I really like that episode too. I think it's great. And of course, in Prelude to Axanar, we reference a character, John Gill, in his younger days, is narrating the Prelude to Axanar documentary, a character that was introduced in that episode. He was a historian, and he actually he came across a stagnant civilization, and he thought that National Socialism was the way to go to kickstart that moribund society and turn it into an engine of prosperity. What he didn't realize is the National Socialists needed somebody to hate. So their neighboring planet Zeon became the people that they would hate. And yes, it's not lost upon me that Zeon and Zionist are quite close. Alexander Wilson is here. Alexander Wilson said, rape my childhood. I wish people who say that volunteer time at a gender violence or organization because they would never use it or say the R word about something fictional. I swear people live in a sheltered world. Well, I agree with you. I really do. And I've known people, and I've actually been a participant in a case where I was defending somebody who had been suffering horrible abuse over the course of years and rape was involved. And it's an awful thing. And it wasn't the best thing in the world. But after all, as Lieutenant Uhura said, we have learned not to fear words. However, we don't want to belittle anyone's plight. I think it's a dumb phrase. I don't know who came up with it. But, and by the way, your childhood can't be raped by a movie. And it is dumb. And Alexander, I agree with you. I think it's a stupid thing to say, to be honest. But people do say it. And I don't know what we can say about that. Doshi says, Doshi's here. Hello, Doshi. Where have you been? Will you pick up the Toy Story trilogy on 4K? I probably will, actually. Although I'd be curious if the first Toy Story movies have been re-rendered in 4K, because they look pretty damn good. I tend to only want to buy things in 4K that are actual 4K discs. I don't buy everything. I mean, new movies, even I think Infinity War and the new Marvel Cinematic Universe movies are indeed upscale versions. But when they do things like the new Matrix trilogy discs, those are actual new, true 4K new transfers. But yes, Doshi asks, did you see the Dr. Sleep trailer? Thoughts? Yes, I did. For those who don't know, Ewan McGregor stars as the grown-up Danny Torrance from The Shining. Yes, Dr. Sleep is a sequel to The Shining based on Stephen King's book of the same name. I saw the trailer today, and they actually, now I don't know, look like they recreated shots from The Shining. I don't know if the shots were all, the blood coming out of the elevator looked like they might have repurposed that, but it was pretty damn cool. I am in. Mike Flanagan directed it. I'm sure the movie is going to be great. I think Ewan McGregor is probably great, and I'm actually really excited about Dr. Sleep. So, again, bring it on. We're getting The Shining on 4K, a new transfer, and we're getting a sequel in the theaters. Amazing. Stubble McShave says, Tennant and Sheen are like an old married couple in Good Omens. They really are. And are they not amazing together? Amazing. Really, really loved them together. Let's see. Got some more letters. And yes, did I mention? I did mention I have a good Willow Yang letter coming. This one, this is a long one. It's a letter that comes from Kyle Arking. Dear RMB, first off, I would like to thank you and John Campia for the countless hours of joy that you have given me watching your live stream shows. I discovered John the week he started his show, and you the day he brought you on to the Weekly Hero. I've been watching every day. Thank you for that. Except for the weeks that a Star Wars or MCU film premieres and I shut off the temptations of the internet. The topic that I would like to discuss today is not only one that means a lot to me, but also one that I feel means a lot to the entire Post-Geek Singularity community. In order to explain what I'm talking about, I must give some necessary background. Over the past year, I have been obsessed with Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. In a span of a year, we rewatched the film 5 times, ripped into all the special features on the DVD and VHS, and yes, I'm talking about the sensational documentary called The Beginning, the video production diaries going back to the early 90s when George Lucas first started the screenplay, and even the audio commentaries. I read the movie novelization, I listened to the soundtrack, I purchased a majority of the action figures from my comic book shop, and relentlessly scavenged the internet forums to find people's reactions from 1999. You, sir, are a madman. You fit right in here. What is the meaning of this obsession? Why does an average Joe like me want to research a film made 20 years ago? I was born January 17th, 1999. I turned 20 this year. And I've reached the point in my life where I'm now in college, thinking about my future in acting and filmmaking, and I just have this need to understand the meaning of life. I love you, man. All of my priorities that I've grown up with are ending. Avengers, Game of Thrones, X-Men, Arrow, Toy Story, How to Train Your Dragon, and the Skywalker saga. You might be thinking, wow, this kid probably is just like everyone else in history thinking about the world. The truth is, that I feel this strange yet familiar connection to 1999 because this is the world in which I was born into. Everything that happened prior to 1999 is ancient history to me. I can only find out what it was like through my family and older friends. It was a bridge between two worlds, the 20th century and the 21st. much like the wardrobe in Narnia. Everything that happened in 1999 is what shaped me into who I would become and the world in which I would live in. I've researched 1999 because I want to discover where my origins lie and find the answers I seek. In a way, I'm very similar to Oswald Cobblepot in Batman Returns. But the big difference is I don't want to attack the city with armed penguins and blackmailing Max Shrek. Through my research, I've discovered two parts of 1999 that I have a connection to. The first one is the Phantom Menace, of course. The second, and this is a very sensitive topic that I will try my utmost to respect, is Columbine. At the beginning of 1999, The Phantom Menace was the most anticipated film of all time, according to online sources. Columbine was just a school in the middle of nowhere. By the time The Phantom Menace was released, Columbine was no longer just a school. I won't go into what happened because it isn't my story to tell, but I will get to the main point of this email. How important is film? Stephen Kernow was only 14 when The Phantom Menace was almost heading to theaters. He was like us. He was an imagination connoisseur. I didn't know Stephen, but from accounts of his family and his friends, he was an avid Star Wars fan. He could recite all the lines from the films and was extremely excited for Episode 1. Unfortunately, he was never able to see it on May 19th or even go to the very first ever Star Wars celebration at Midnight Madness. The victims of Columbine, like Steve and Rachel Joy Scott, who aspired to be an actress that may have very well been in some of the movies we watch today, were still in this world when I was born into it. Yet they left before I could even form my first memory. Then there is The Phantom Menace, a movie that will exist in time forever, whether it be on home video or Disney Plus, long after we're gone. A movie that Steve wanted very much to see, like the rest of the world. I feel we live in an age where people think of films as only what they want them to be. If a movie like The Last Jedi doesn't meet a fan's expectations, then it will be shunned and sometimes lead into ugly attacks. However, I feel that people need to put their expectations aside and at least appreciate how hard it is to make a film and take into consideration what that film or show may mean to a different set of people. I grew up with the prequels. They're in my DNA. Luke, Han, and Leia feel like my grandparents. I feel much closer to Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme, who are like my parents. Now, Rey, Finn, and Poe feel like my siblings. I love Star Wars, and it's my introduction to the prequels that made me cement that love. The first Star Wars film I saw in theaters was the Episode 1 3D re-release, and it was glorious. My entire world all ties back to The Phantom Menace, and I just can't help but think that everyone has a film or franchise that they feel just as connected to. I think about the night I saw my most anticipated movie of all time, The Dark Knight Rises, at midnight. And unbeknownst to me, in a theater in Aurora, Colorado, there was another tragedy waiting to happen. Another reason why this is so personal to me is that I attended Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Before 2018, it was just a school. My school. I had graduated the year before it happened, but I was only across the street at our local movie theater, buying my tickets for Black Panther. Once again, I think about all those who were excited for Black Panther and who couldn't see it. Another film tied into my life and a place I felt safe, whereas the lives of so many were cut short. To me, film isn't just a way of seeing the world, but it is a way of preserving time. The future people walking on this earth will look at these movies, but some will never fully realize those movies' place in society. I'm watching The Phantom Menace because I love it, and it's where I feel safe. I'm now older than many of the victims of Columbine, and it makes me think to myself that maybe if we just take a moment to think about the people we love, the movies we love, and what else we love in life, maybe the world will be a better place. As I continue to watch The Phantom Menace, I will think of Steve, Rachel, and all of the rest, whose lives were so short, yet important. I will end this email with a quote from one of my favorite films, Blade Runner, and will assure the Imagination Connoisseur community that no one and nothing will ever be forgotten as long as we pass it on. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I've seen sea beams glittering in the dark near the Tannhauser gates. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in the rain. I think that's the one quote from movies everybody knows by heart. Sincerely, Kyle. P.S. Thank you so much for reading. Now I'm going to get back reading Dune and the Godzilla King of the Monsters movie novelization. You know, Kyle, you're 20 years old. But if you represent not even, I guess you're not even a millennial anymore. You're actually Generation Z, or maybe you're still a millennial. But it's letters like yours that make me realize that, you know what, we're going to be okay. What a phenomenal letter! I one of the greatest letters I think I've read. Certainly one of the best letters we've ever had here at the Burnettwork on Robservations. I want to thank you for that, and how thoughtful and truly moving your letter was. And you know what? People ask me, I know there's a lot of my friends are like, dude, come on. You're doing these live chats. What are you doing these live chats for? And it's because people are sending me letters like yours, and that we're building a community. I don't even know what we're going to do with this community. Maybe we won't do anything. Maybe we'll just, use it to pass the time and put a smile on someone's face a couple times a day or whatever. But I think it's valuable what's going on here. I think the fact that we desperately need in these times to hey, let's all hold our roles, man. And let's bring it down and remember why being alive is pretty damn cool. And we have to remember that, as they say in Full Metal Jacket, the dead only know one thing: it is better to be alive. And what a fantastic letter that you have sent me. And I want to thank you for that very, very much. And here's a letter that comes from Clive Howard. Actually, you know what? Before I read Clive Howard's letter, let's see what other people are saying. You in the chats. Alexander Wilson again. By the way, another great, thank you for all the support for the channel, sir. Alexander Wilson says, Joe Rogan and Kevin Hart said it's not cool to be positive and easier to be negative or clickbaity because it is in effect a way to get people to pay attention to things, and people want to see people fail. I think that that's true. Joe Rogan is one of the biggest guys on the internet. And it's funny, somebody tried to smear him as being an alt-right guy, which is amazing. It's amazing when you start having people and talking to all different kinds of people, that somebody comes on that you or somebody doesn't personally agree with, and they paint the person who has them on their show like a Joe Rogan with that brush. And I think you're right. But I also think, I have learned this is a truism in life, a Burnett Axiom. It is always better. Actually, it's not a Burnett Axiom. It is always better to try and create something. It takes courage, it takes optimism, and it takes vision. And even if you fail, your efforts are going to make the world a better place. I've always believed. I just made that up, by the way. I'm sure I'm paraphrasing somebody, but I honestly believe that. And here's a Goethe, the German philosopher, and I'm paraphrasing, but he had a quote, and I don't remember the exact quote, but he talked about when you truly commit to a course of action, when you in your mind, I'm committing, and you actually start following through on that commitment, whether it's a project, whether it's you want to change your life, whatever it is, if you truly start to commit and head down that path, the universe will start to click into place, and it will start opening up and making your journey easier, and indeed providing, whether it's people or inspiration or materials or whatever you need, that kind of energy comes back at you. And I believe that. I mean, work, in my experience in the entertainment business, work begets work. You can sit there and talk about how great of a writer you are or how great of a filmmaker you are, but unless you're out there making films or writing books or poetry or whatever it is, and then putting it out there, And by the way, what I've found really interesting is like I've been slogging away now for 30 years. It's funny. I've been personally pilloried lately, where people have said, well, certain individuals said, "Oh, I'm not where I want to be in my life," and I countered. I said, "Well, that's true, because I'm not living in a cool space hotel above the rings of Saturn, because that's where I'd really like to be right now. Because wouldn't that be awesome?" But barring that, I'm having a pretty good time. I'm working on a feature film. I might be working on a second feature film pretty quickly here. I got projects cooking, working on a documentary. There's all kinds of stuff going on. And I don't know, it's all work begets work. When you put yourself out there and start making things. Now, I'm not saying that if you're a talentless hack that you're going to suddenly become successful, but you're never going to get anywhere if you're not trying, or at least, and now we live in this day and age where you can share and get out there more than we've ever in all of human history. We've got this. Anybody can start a YouTube channel and start talking and start building an audience. So I agree with you, Alexander. I think it's always better to be positive, and it's always better to create. It's harder, as they said in Star Trek 2. It's, as a matter of cosmic history, it's always been easier to destroy than to create. But watch out. Here comes Genesis. Anyway, Factual Opinion also says, would you be annoyed to know I only watched the TOS remastered? The CGI didn't bother me. It just looks better. Sorry, Trekkies. Well, okay. First of all, I find this, for those of you who don't know, when back in 2008, when they put the original series on Blu-ray, they put out two versions. Thank God. They put out the original versions, and then they put out the remastered versions where they redid the space special effects. They recomposited things. They created new matte paintings, because when they were creating the special effects back in the 60s, these things were optically printed. You had one layer on top of another layer on top of another layer. And the visual effects were a lot dirtier because you're having multiple layers of film that were handled more. So where you could clean the beautiful live action negative of the characters interacting, the special effects they looked dirty. And to go back and clean them up, they were fuzzier, and it was just, you couldn't do it. So it was thought, and the choice was made to create new special effects, space shots, especially all the space visual effects. And for me, it's very hit and miss. My favorite episodes of the remastered series are things like Court Martial, where you found out where the ion pod was, the subtle effects that actually they did a great job building onto the universe. When you actually got to see the Klingon and Federation fleets over Organia, things like that, that just little, they added to they added to the storytelling. And sometimes they were good. Like, I did not like, for instance, what they did to the Fisarius Baylock ship in Corbomite maneuver. And there were things they changed that I just didn't like. I didn't like the design work. I didn't like the choices that were made. But so for me, it's hit and miss. And as they went along, it got a lot better. So I am not annoyed. I'm just happy you're watching the original series, because the power of those episodes hasn't been at all diminished, as you can see. So back to this letter. Clive Howard. Clive Howard says, "Hi, Rob. I very much enjoy watching your show. I love your Hollywood insight combined with incredible fan knowledge, and it's super enjoyable to see you talk about all things geek. I've watched your recent multi-part defense of Kathleen Kennedy and the various responses. These robust exchanges inspired me to write you on the topic. I feel there's a disconnect between your defense of Kathleen Kennedy and the point that some are trying to make. As you said, Kathleen's legacy as a producer is impeccable. She basically produced my childhood. But while you have been defending her as a producer, I think others have been criticizing her as the president of LucasFilm. Surely those are different roles, even if they are some common skills. In my industry, there's a big difference between being head of a product and CEO. The question that I would love to get your thoughts on is, who ultimately is responsible for the good and bad of Disney Star Wars, if not Kathleen Kennedy? If Kennedy is to be given credit for successes, surely she must take some criticism for what people don't like. You've voiced very valid criticisms of Disney Star Wars, but you don't seem to attribute them to anyone specifically. But there must be one or more individuals who make the decisions that fans either support or disagree with. Otherwise, it all comes back to the head of Lucasfilm. For example, there seems to be no one responsible for the overall story of the current trilogy. Individual filmmakers appear to have made the movies they want with little thought for the whole. Am I wrong? Many people, including yourself, seem to have no idea what the latest trilogy is about. You've said that it's Kathleen Kennedy's job to hire creative people for this type of task. Who made the decision not to hire someone to do this, if not Kennedy? With regards to your point about it being show business, I appreciate that. I've run 2 businesses. One runs a business for the short and long term. LucasFilm has delivered in the short term. $4 billion over 4 films is fantastic. But film revenues are trending down. Parts of the customer base are alienated. And as the father of a boy who's the age I was when I got into Star Wars, I don't see children as interested in Disney Star Wars. The latter isn't surprising to me. Whatever older fans think of The Last Jedi, no child is interested in seeing a grumpy old man mope about on an island while large ships trudge through space for 2.5 hours. Today's Luke Skywalker may interest mature viewers as a character study, but he doesn't appeal to children, the future of the franchise, as the original Luke did. Lucasfilm may have sacrificed the long term for the short. That will prove to be good show business? If not, who will be held accountable if not the head of Lucasfilm? Finally, there are individuals within the fan base who have acted terribly. There are also some on the Lucasfilm side who, I would suggest, have made ill-advised comments. You showed true professionalism when saying that some people have ripped you in the comments and just waving it off, even thanking them for contributing. There are those connected to Lucasfilm who have not exercised such restraint. Again, I suggest that the head of Lucasfilm could have acted on this. To make it clear that certain comments were not the views of Lucasfilm, Lucasfilm respects the fans within limits and is listening to them. Surely, it's not good for business when I see Star Wars fans used as shorthand for a toxic community. Kennedy seems to have sat by and watched both sides throw shade at each other. I would not expect a producer to do anything, but who should if not the president of the company? I know it may seem unfair or even wrong for people to blame Kathleen Kennedy for certain aspects of Star Wars, but across the industry, we see CEOs and presidents of companies face the ire of customers. It's not unique to Kathleen Kennedy, Lucasfilm, Hollywood, or fan bases, customers. Even in the largest organizations, despite who may be responsible, the credit and blame falls on the person at the top, at least publicly. I'm not questioning Kennedy's abilities as a producer, but the role of the president of Lucasfilm. The position carries a responsibility that sits above any individual movie, to the whole output and image of the company, good and bad. If they are to get the credit for the incredible successes of the last few years, how can they not also be accountable for your own and others' concerns about Star Wars? If not them, then who? Perhaps the role has been misunderstood, but then who should people congratulate or criticize? That person can't just get the positive and not the negative. I don't hear anyone mention Lin-Wen Brennan and her role. Perhaps it sits above Lucasfilm with Alan Horn or Bob Iger. I'm simply curious as to your view, given that you have better insight than I, and probably most of us viewers. Many thanks for your efforts and content and taking time to read this missive. Best wishes, Clive. Again, Clive Howard, this is why I like doing this channel and like having these chats, because someone such as yourself sends in a thoughtful, cogent, well-reasoned letter that's in response to something I've said, and we might disagree with some things or agree with other things, but here's a way to this is exactly the kind of discourse that I expect to come out of this channel. And you bring up a lot of questions, and I would say that here's my thoughts on that. I think you're correct that a president of a company is the figurehead, just like the president of the United States should be leading by example. And I think one of the things that I think, like the president of the United States, I think there's a lot of people, and I'm one of them, who does not feel he represents the kind of leadership that I would want to convey to the rest of the world. And, for the most part, I think Kathleen Kennedy has, in fact, done a pretty good job. I mean, she goes to Star Wars Celebration. Remember, when you're working in Hollywood as a producer, when you're making films, you're not paying attention to fans. Your nose is to the grindstone, and you're trying to make the best movie possible. I watched firsthand, as when we were working on Superman Returns, when the first picture of Superman and Brandon Routh was unveiled to the world on the internet. I was actually there shooting behind the scenes footage as they were doing the photo session, as David James, the great David James, was taking those very pictures. You can see some of it on my documentary. And it was really interesting. I saw all of this just amazing vitriolic hatred leveled at Brandon Routh and everybody that was working on making Superman Returns. Now, it was very interesting because you see that everybody, as we know from our previous letter writer, comes to all of these franchises at a different time in their lives, and these things mean different things to different people. And like you so astutely pointed out, kids today are not going to be attracted to Star Wars in the same way that we were. As a matter of fact, kids watching the original Star Wars I think I've heard many people tell me that their kids find it boring because people's attention spans have changed. And I think that more than anything else is what we have to realize with these franchises, is that these franchises are really products of their time. And I've even said that franchises, what's the shelf life of pop culture? I think the real problem with Star Wars is, honestly, it's gone on too long. It's expired. Its shelf life is over. Now, I watch gameplay of the video game Jedi Fallen Order, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to play that, because I love this idea of being deeply immersed in the Star Wars universe because I grew up with it. But, we have new franchises and new things that belong to other people's pop culture. I think Star Wars is unique, along with Star Trek, in that it's transcended its shelf life. It's moved beyond that 20-year threshold, and it's continued on. And people are trying to now reinvent it, and they're trying to change it, and they're trying to make it appeal to the new generation. And by doing that, by definition, you're locked into where the generation is now. We have a lot more kids today, younger people there's a lot more inclusion. There's a lot more awareness of race relations, of gender, of all different kinds of things. We have young people that are growing up that are far more aware of social injustice than, say, we were growing up in the late 70s, early 80s. So the world has definitely changed. And I think what's really interesting is, as Star Wars, as they're trying to change it, as you so definitely pointed out, the people that grew up with Star Wars one way, they're not open to have it changing. Now, here's the thing. I'm all for change. Ultimately, something still has to be a great story, well told. And what I am seeing, and what I've certainly seen in the Star Wars franchise and absolutely in the Star Trek franchise, is that the kinds of stories that are being addressed and told are different than telling good stories. I think the same is true of the Twilight Zone. Now, people talk about it being, whether it's social justice, or I see it as what people are doing. It's not that they're pushing agendas necessarily, but I see the point of a story used to be inherent. You sort of hid the message, and you allowed the viewer or the reader to sort of figure out what you had, the overarching plot, and you can follow the plot machinations and all what the characters are doing, and the message would be buried in there, slyly buried in there. And that's what made stories great. I mean, you can watch old Twilight Zone episodes and follow the actual plots, or you can choose to look deeper. And indeed, there's a lot of social justice, I would call social justice messaging in the original Twilight Zone. But for the most part, those messages were never great stories. I mean, there's bad classic Twilight Zone episodes. There's redundant and rehashes of other episodes. I'm not saying every Twilight Zone episode, all 157 episodes, are genius, because they're not. But the best episodes of Twilight Zone were not didactic. The messages were inherent in the stories that they're telling. And I think that Star Wars isn't exactly some subtle social justice warrior type of a franchise. Although, indeed, from the very beginning, who is the first person that we meet? We meet Princess Leia, and she's a badass. I've never understood why anybody has a problem with women in science fiction. I mean, from the opening, Princess Leia stands up to Darth Vader. I mean, and then stands up to Grand Moff Tarkin. I mean, I should have expected to find you holding Vader's leash. I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board. I mean, I was 10 years old going, yeah, I want to meet a girl like that in my life. I mean, come on. And that's why I've never understood, like, why don't you like Holdo? I mean, why Star Wars has always been full of strong female leaders from the very get-go. Aren't you too short? Aren't you too short to be a stormtrooper or whatever she says? This is some rescue. I don't understand it. But when it comes to Kathleen Kennedy, I think you have to ask yourself, the mistakes that people are saying that she's been making, are they really mistakes? I mean, if you're the president of a company, I think she's done a pretty great job. She's certainly gone to the Star Wars celebrations, which she doesn't have to do. She's greenlit things like The Mandalorian, which is probably the most exciting thing that's come down the pike since they announced they were making more Star Wars movies. And, the fact that Lord and Miller didn't work out on Solo, and that Rogue One sort of needed to be fixed. This is not, by the way, unheard of in Hollywood, and Rogue One turned out okay. So, I mean, she's taking over, and she was tasked with a Herculean job, taking over the most beloved entertainment franchise that probably has ever existed. And I would say that as both the president of the company and as a producer on the films, and believe me, she's not just a figurehead. She's involved. She's still getting her executive producer credit because she's involved with the films. I think she's done a pretty great job. Now, I don't think, she's hiring people and she lets them do their jobs. And there's been, according to fans, varying degrees of success. But I do think, look, your point is well taken. Can you be a good president and a good producer? Those jobs, are they mutually exclusive? I think it's tough to do. I mean, you don't see Alan Horn producing movies. You certainly don't see Bob Iger producing movies, although Bob Iger is one of the smartest men who's ever worked in Hollywood. But I think that in Kathleen Kennedy's case, she's been involved with filmmakers that have provided this kind of, starting with the Lord of the Rings, with the Raiders movies. I mean, she knows what a fan base is. She's watched these fan bases grow from their inception. And I think she's done a pretty great job. I really do. And she's kept it all going and kept it all going well. But, you might be right. Is it too much? I mean, can you still be a creative entity and at the same time provide great entertainment? I think she's done what she really needed to do. She's hired these great filmmakers and let them do their work. The problem is, do we have the kind of filmmakers that know really what to do with Star Wars and can make the kind of Star Wars that everybody wants? Is there that filmmaker? I mean, even George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, I don't think Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and you had the two creators, was a great Indiana Jones movie. Now, while I liked Rocky Balboa, I think Ryan Coogler came along and reinvented that universe. And that's what we need. I don't think that necessarily... Look, Rian Johnson brought his independent filmmaking sensibility to Star Wars, and the studio had a great time working with him making that movie. They were very happy with that movie, and they were high on him as a creator. They had no problems. And when they see the movie, look, to be honest, I'll tell you right out, the people that work at motion picture studios, believe it or not, they know when a movie's bad, because a movie being bad is pretty self-evident. But when they're making Star Wars movies or Batman v Superman movies, they don't know if it's good or not. They really don't. And I know that seems strange, but it's true. They just don't know. They think they know. They hope they know. But they don't really know because they're removed. They're removed from that. Kevin Feige, do you know why Kevin Feige is so successful? Because he was a fan. He's the perfect example of how a fan... He was an intern. I mean, I think we were working on the Warner Brothers lot at the same time. He was working for Richard Donner. Like, I believe he's a contemporary of Jeff Johns. They were working together. And he grew up. He's the perfect synthesis of fan and professional. And he knows. Kevin Feige knows what's good and bad. And you know what? He knew Captain Marvel was going to be good. Maybe not $1 billion. I knew it was going to make $1 billion before it came out. But anyway, Clive, I don't know if I answered your question well, but I really did like your letter. I thought that was a tremendous letter. And again, another example of why I do these things and why these are so fun. Let's see what anybody else, what is anybody else saying? I know I'm missing people in the chat throwing out questions. This is awesome. Okay. Dr. Forbin, he even has the logo. For those of you who don't know, if you haven't seen, I believe it's 1970. I think Joseph Sargent directed it. If you haven't seen the science fiction movie, also based on a novel, based on a trilogy of novels, actually, Colossus, the Forbin Project, get on it right now. Colossus, the Forbin Project is basically, I don't want to ruin it for you, but it's horribly dated in terms of their portrayal of a supercomputer, Colossus. I mean, it basically is built into the side of a mountain. That's how big it is. But you'll watch Colossus, the Forbin Project, that was made in 1970, and you'll watch it and be like, first of all, it's a great science fiction movie. It's a widescreen science fiction movie. It's really handsomely mounted. But you're going to be like, oh, this is where Skynet came from. And of course, it came from a lot of, Colossus, the Forbin Project came from a lot of things. But so I'm sorry, this person who sent me a super chat is new because I haven't seen this before, because I would have been tickled to death by seeing this name. Dr. Forbin / Colossus. Oh my God. Says, ordered Atari XB1 on Blu-ray after watching it yesterday. I have the DVD released a few years ago. Well, let me tell you, for those who don't know, Atari XB1, I had never seen this movie. I'd seen the American International version a long time ago, but I don't even remember it. Is a Czechoslovakian, yes, it is a Czechoslovakian science fiction movie from 1963. And it's amazing. And the Blu-ray is incredible. I was shocked at first of all, watching it now. There's so many things about it that are interesting. It's a product of its time, but it's got, for the time, very good special effects, really interesting social commentary, and you can see where, after the communists had put Sputnik up, they thought they were going to have dominance in space. And it is definitely an artifact of its time, but oh my God, it needs to be spoken of up there with a pantheon of great science fiction movies. So Dr. Forbin and Colossus, you will be very excited that you have this Blu-ray. And I cannot recommend, I mean, maybe it'll be on the Sci-Fi Channel, but you know, there's a lot of, well, not a lot, but there's a lot of, well, there's Eastern Bloc science fiction that has been very difficult to see. And there's other movies that I've wanted to see that I've never seen. Like Zulawiski's science fiction film that he never totally finished. The director of Possession with Isabella Gianni and Sam Neill. And I really love this movie. And I thought it was so great to finally see it. The presentation is beautiful. And it's just a really interesting view of space. And you can see where its influence spread throughout 60s science fiction. So you are going to love it. You're going to love it, Dr. Forbin. And I love the fact that your Avi is based on the Forbin Project, another great 1970s science fiction film that looks great on Blu-ray. I bought the UK import when it first came out. Colossus, the Forbin Project was released in a double Laserdisc set with Letterboxd with silent running, because they're both Universal movies. Early 70s goodness. So, yeah. And also, get it, by the way, I can't recommend it highly enough. And next here is Dan V900, who says, speaking of physical media, I finally watched One Cut of the Dead after getting it from the UK on your recommendation 2 months ago. It was great. Well, I too watched One Cut of the Dead finally. It is a Japanese zombie movie with a twist. And it's really, really good. And even though it's nothing like this, if you haven't seen Charlie Booker, if you haven't seen the guy who made Black Mirror, now wait a minute, am I saying his name wrong? Is it Brooker? Did I say Booker? Let me just get it right. It's Brooker. Sorry, it is. I knew that. Charlie Brooker. Charlie Brooker, before he made Black Mirror, made a really great British limited series called Dead Set. That's all set in the Big Brother show. It's the original UK Big Brother. There's even people that appeared in Big Brother. But in his series, the zombie apocalypse comes, and the producers of Big Brother, and certainly the people in the Big Brother house, don't know this has happened. And if you guys have not seen Dead Set, I think it's on Netflix. You've got to watch Dead Set. But One Cut of the Dead, it's nothing like Dead Set, but it reminded me of a really innovative way to approach the zombie genre. So if you guys haven't seen One Cut of the Dead, pick it up. You got to watch it. So Dan V900, thank you, and thanks for supporting the channel. Brian Cruz said, did you buy the new Batman remastered 4Ks yet? Or are you going to wait till September for the box set? Best Buy has a cool Steelbook set for pre-order. You know what? I have not bought those yet, but I'm going to. You know what? To be honest, I think I would only buy the first two. I wouldn't buy Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. I mean, I've got that Blu-ray box set. That's enough. But I will get those transfers because everyone's singing their praises, aside from the controversial sound mix on the first Batman. Brian Cruz says, that was Brian Cruz. But yes, I haven't got him yet, but I want to. Neon God says, thoughts on Mubi. I haven't left my apartment in 3 weeks. I have no thoughts. I have not experienced it yet. But I will. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I don't leave my house enough, but I need to check that out. This next letter is a follow-up letter. It comes from Troy Williams. Troy Williams, you might remember from a couple of days ago, maybe last week. He wrote a letter, maybe it was just Monday. He wrote a letter talking about how he watched The Matrix, the first Matrix, for the first time recently and was underwhelmed. Well, here I'm going to leave Troy Williams from CinemaSurvey to continue. Hey, Rob, as you know, a few days ago, I sent you a letter about how I was disappointed when I finally watched The Matrix a few months ago. I enjoyed it, but after so much buildup, I didn't think it was quite as good as almost everyone else does. You read my letter, and at the end, you said you would like to know my thoughts about the following two Matrix films. Challenge accepted. For this letter, I will focus on The Matrix Reloaded. I wanted to start off by talking about what I believe are the film's biggest strengths, the action sequences. The fight scenes in the film were absolutely magnificent. The two sequences that I found to be particularly impressive were Neo versus the army of Agent Smiths, before it turns into a massive CGI mess, and Neo versus the henchmen in the classical French stairway area. The choreography in both scenes were impressive and had a gritty edge. Another fantastic action scene was the car chase, which was one of the most well-directed chases I've ever seen in a movie. The visual effects were hit and miss. Some of them looked spectacular, like when Superman Neo flew in to save Trinity, and other times, not so much, like Neo versus Agent Smith, once Neo starts running on the different Smiths' heads. The plot wasn't as good as the first movie, but it was fine. I did find the reveal of the cyclical nature of the Matrix and the One to be interesting, though a little confusing. Overall, the plot itself was kind of okay. Not bad, but not great either. What stood out to me the most about the movie was its most negative aspect, its cheesiness. For one, the dialogue could be quite atrocious. For example, here is a line from the movie. Agent Smith, go ahead and shoot. The best part of being me is there is so many of me. Yikes! Also, the acting could be pretty bad. Sometimes a character would say a line in such an over-dramatized way that it felt as if I was watching a spoof movie. The worst offender of making the film feel cheesy, however, was the dance party. Morpheus is just given a speech that I found to be very good. He talked about shedding fear, which reminded me of Churchill's Fear Itself speech, and about how they have forced 100 years of war, and yet they've faced 100 years of war, and yet we're still standing. I found that to be very powerful. 5 minutes later, all of the people who listened to the speech were dancing while club-like music was playing in the background. It was a very strange transition. They were raging against the dying of the light. Overall, this movie was just okay. It wasn't the worst movie I've seen, but the cheesiness really soured it for me. It was quite a step down in quality from the first film. Now, on to The Matrix Revolutions. Troy Williams, CinemaSurvey.net. Well, you know, it's interesting, Troy. All those movies, as everyone here probably knows, when they first came out, were incredibly controversial and I think disappointing for everyone. That car chase was actually filmed long before they started principal photography, and they built like a 2-mile stretch of freeway to shoot it on because that would be cheaper than trying to find a freeway. But yeah, I think you're not alone in thinking the movie was a little cheesy. And I think that you're not wrong. And I'm going to be curious to hear what you think of the Matrix Revolutions. For myself, I think the real disappointment in the Matrix sequels for me is that by the end of the film, by the end of the first movie, this idea that and now this term's all over the internet, that Neo did take the red pill and he saw how deep the rabbit hole went. And the whole movie is about freeing his mind from preconceptions and indeed to understand that the world around him was not at all the way he thought. And the idea, I thought, by the end of The Matrix was that his job, Neo's job as the One, was now to free all mankind. He was clearly a messianic figure. He was clearly a savior. And the only way to liberate all of mankind is to basically red pill a civilization at once. And that's what I thought that the Matrix sequels would be about. And while I liked what was happening, the everyman, all of humanity that was trapped in the Matrix, their plight was forgotten. You know, one of the interesting things about the Matrix was seeing an ordinary guy like Neo, who's just a hacker who knew something was wrong. He knew the world was not quite right. And watching his journey to get red pilled and find out just how deep the rabbit hole went, and then trying to liberate himself. And then what happens when a savior realizes they're a savior? And then they then have to turn around and, as that messianic figure, bring their message to the masses. What happens then? That's what I thought the sequels would be about, and they really didn't do that. And it became less about the Matrix, and then they were making up all this cockamamie. As much as, look, I love the Merovingian, and I really like seeing Monica Bellucci, my God, and I like the Ghost twins and all that stuff. It was all just gobbledygook that had nothing to do with the story that was set up in the first Matrix. And that was my thoughts. Although I do feel that I like those movies better now. I know they were rushed and it was a tall order because I don't know if they ever. I once read that the Wachowskis wanted to make the ultimate superhero movie and give it verisimilitude so people could believe in superheroes, and that by the end of the Matrix, when Neo flies away, they had done that. They had created this. Why could people be superheroes? How could it be realistic? And how could you believe them? Because they're really in the Matrix. So that's what allowed superheroic feats to. I don't know if this is how I'm remembering it. I might have read about this and I might be remembering it wrong, but I'm remembering. That's how I'm remembering it. This next one comes from JB Bonifacio. He says, and JB is a longtime viewer of both the John Campea show and this show. So welcome, sir. Thank you for another letter. I sent a super chat earlier this week with a hot take stating that I believe to this day that 1999 was and is the best year ever in movies. Not convinced? Well, let's count them off. The movies of 1999. Fight Club, The Matrix, 10 Things I Hate About You, Office Space, Boys Don't Cry, The Sixth Sense, The Virgin Suicides, The Iron Giant, American Pie, Run Lola Run, Election, Galaxy Quest, Being John Malkovich, American Beauty, Three Kings, and Magnolia. I challenge anyone to find a year with more influential cinema. Thanks for reading my letter, Rob. Well, JB, I can only say that is a fine list of films. But, and by the way, I did not prepare this beforehand. I disagree with you. I think that while there's a lot of great movies there, I don't think that they necessarily. Here's the thing, and it's a generational thing, but and indeed, all of these movies are remembered, and you did pick the best of the year. Let's go down. I'm going to do an experiment. Let's see. I'm going to go to the year 1941. I'm going to read some of the movies that came out in 1941. And now here's the thing. I know you're going to say that there's a lot of movies that you haven't seen and you don't know them. But I'm going to read to you the movies of 1941. And this is kind of, I didn't think I was going to do this, but I know what came out this year. So here's some of the movies that came out in 1941. Citizen Kane, The Maltese Falcon, The Lady Eve, Sullivan's Travels, How Green Was My Valley, Dumbo, Here Comes Mr. Jordan, High Sierra, Suspicion, The Devil and Daniel Webster, The Wolf Man, The Sea Wolf. That's just a few. And it goes on and on and on. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Buck Privates. They died with their boots on. So it depends when you're alive. And again, it has to do with pop culture. But I mean, Sullivan's Travels, Lady Eve, Maltese Falcon, Citizen Kane, How Green Was My Valley, Dumbo, Here Comes Mr. Jordan. A lot of these movies have been remade. Suspicion. I mean, I think you're not wrong. So I'm not telling you you're wrong. I am just pointing out, though, that there are other years that truly also have great movies, and we should seek them out. We should seek those movies out because there is a lot of great films out there. And, it's just a question of learning. Here's another one. I really like this letter. This letter comes from James M. Now, this is a change of pace. Very interesting. James M. says, "Hi, Rob. Today, I have a question that I've been wondering ever since John Campea said it was among his 2 favorite days. Why do people like the Academy Awards so much? It doesn't make sense to me that people would watch different awards being handed out for movies that tend to be only left-leaning, therefore not being inclusive. Also, those that get awards seem to get hatefully political in their acceptance speech. I am not going to say that a Christian movie deserves an award. As a Christian myself, I don't think any, except maybe one, deserves an award, that one being The Prince of Egypt. I will also avoid the fact that there are no good right-leaning movies. Instead, I will ask why this big night is so big and important. If, as John says, that all film is subjective, then why would he say that each movie should be in the same category? If it is subjective, then there should be a category for each genre, like the way the music award shows are set up: Western, superhero, horror, and of course musical. The list goes on. Personally, I say the answer to almost every question is, it depends. So to me, all award shows are boring and far too political for me. With one exception, the only award show I watch is the CMAs, the Country Music Awards. They don't get that political, and if they do, it is good, clean, lighthearted fun, poked evenly to both sides, and even then, it is only at the beginning. Well, James, thanks for that letter. That's an interesting take and a new take. We haven't heard that here. But I think I can just tell you, for me, why the Academy Awards was always important. I started watching the Academy Awards when I was a kid, and in the 70s, and there was a lot of really interesting movies in the 70s, but really the Academy Awards were a celebration of the magic of movies. Now, there's always been crazy political stuff. They weren't nearly as political. I think the Academy Awards started becoming more political in the 60s and 70s, of course, when Marlon Brando had a Indian woman accept his Academy Award. It got a little crazy. But I think ultimately the Academy Awards celebrate the magic of movies as a whole. At least they did for me. When I was growing up, I got to see the people. It wasn't so much the stars that I got to see. I was more fascinated by seeing what did the people look like who made the movies. In my mind, directors and producers and cinematographers, these were gods to me. And to see them as flesh and blood people that would be excited to be honored by their peers, there was something, I don't know, sort of heartening about that. Something that bringing these legendary people down to earth that lived in my mind as the gods of Olympus might have lived in the minds of an ancient Greek person or Roman person, back in the day. That's kind of how I felt about them. And seeing them as flesh and blood people really meant something to me. And I felt like that was my connection with the people that made the favorite things that I loved. And I think in terms of, your point is well taken about genre, but I think the thing about the Academy Awards is we're transcending genre, is that these movies, at least in my mind, I've always thought of the Oscars as these movies are living outside of genre. They're living outside of like, to me, when I saw Unforgiven, I didn't think of it just as a Western. When I saw Unforgiven, I thought of it as, oh my God, that's the best movie of the year. And it came out in the summer. And I'm like, that's winning Best Picture, because it was a deconstruction of the entire Western genre, and it was a deconstruction of Clint Eastwood's own persona, which was an amazing thing. And when you talk about movies that lean right and left, I think there's always been movies that lean. I don't necessarily think, look, I think creative people, artists in general, are more liberal. And liberal, what does liberal mean? But before people start throwing out libtard or these ridiculous monikers, somebody who's liberal is just open to new ideas, and they're open to furthering, I think, the betterment of mankind by being open to new ideas. That's what being liberal is. And I think one of the things about being liberal is that you're open to ideas. I think that Christianity, because Christianity has a very specific doctrine that you have to follow, there are progressive Christians, certainly, but Christianity, and I know this from my sister, who's a born again Christian, her way of life has been set out for her, and her belief system is such that she knows through the teachings of Jesus Christ and her walk with the Lord, she knows how she is supposed to behave and how she's supposed to act and how she's supposed to react to the world around her, and knowing, and in a way, I admire the fact that she has that certainty. I don't have the certainty that she has in my life. And I think that there's in her, because she truly does walk with the Lord, and she truly believes and has accepted Christ as her Lord and Savior. And I think that she has a peace that I don't know, and I probably never will know. However, it does lead to ideological divides, because the interpretation of Christ's word is, of course, left open to interpretation. So as far as Christianity is concerned, I understand where you're coming from. I do. And I don't necessarily think you're wrong either. But there have been jingoistic, I think, right-wing movies. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily consider Patton a left-wing film. Patton's one of my favorite movies, and I totally sympathize with General Patton. He got admonished for slapping a guy. He should have slapped that soldier. And there have been movies like that I would definitely consider. There's a lot of, I think, right-wing or movies that are conservative in their politics that have been made. You just have to seek them out. But those are my thoughts. I want to thank you for writing in. And again, I really appreciate the fact that you felt that you can write this letter. And I hope that as a member of the Post-Geek Singularity community, as an imagination connoisseur, that you feel well served, that I've at least answered your question to the best of my ability, and you feel welcome here, because I'd love to hear more from you. Maybe seek out more. I mean, again, there's no doubt. I just want to point out that there's no doubt that Hollywood is left-leaning, as I think most people in the arts are, because I think they kind of have to be, in a way, because the certainty that my sister has as far as how she leads her life and where she's going in her life is something that I don't have. And that uncertainty and my questioning of the universe is what makes me want to be a storyteller. And I don't know if I would want those things if I had the kind of certainty that my sister had. And I don't necessarily think one is necessarily better than the other. My sister's an incredible mother, and she brings a lot of light to all of those around her. And I think that's a great thing. And I don't necessarily think that I'm better than her because of it. And in certain ways, the way that she's leading her life is a testament to I think Christ would be proud of my sister. I really do. And I don't know if I can say that about all Christians, but I can certainly say that about my sister, and not just because she's my sister. Stubble McShave is here. That's my sister Colleen, by the way, my biological sister. Stubble McShave says, have you seen the Finnish, German, Australian sci-fi comedy Iron Sky? The Nazis went to the moon in 1945 and are returning back to Earth in 2018. Yes, sir. Iron Sky is a hoot. Just like Stubble said, it's basically about the Nazis coming back. It's a lot of fun. Total cult movie. I highly recommend Iron Sky. I think there's a sequel now. Did they make the sequel? I haven't seen the sequel. That's why I don't know if it exists. But I did love Iron Sky a lot. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. Kevin Royce asks, could a Land of the Lost series work today? There was some good sci-fi mixed in with the cheese. I loved Land of the Lost as a kid. I loved Enoch, the Sleestack from the future. Who doesn't remember the theme song? Marshall, Will, and Holly on a routine expedition. Then the greatest earthquake ever known, high on the rapids. Well, anyway, you know the song. I think a Land of the Lost movie could really be interesting. It was, as a kid, I thought like the pylons and sometimes that one thing that flew across the sky when the parachuter came in. Was it their uncle or something? I haven't seen it in a long time. The Sleestacks were scary. The idea that this was this alternate world where the civilization had fallen. I think they absolutely could, but unfortunately, I think you'd be fighting an uphill battle if you did a new Land of the Lost, because the movie was like a parody of it, the Land of the Lost feature film. And I think you'd need somebody with a very deft touch to be able to make a Land of the Lost show. But as a kid, it was easily maybe one of my most favorite Saturday morning, shows, because it was whack. It didn't just have dinosaurs, but it was strange and it was kind of scary. And there was some really interesting stuff in it. So I really liked it. That dude is here. Hello, that dude. I got my Captain Marvel Steelbook Tuesday. Since Avengers 1, the special features on these movies have been really light. I hate that. Watching special features is what piqued my interest in filmmaking. I have to say, the only thing that has disappointed me over the 11 years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the special features, especially because I used to work for Disney. I understand they haven't felt the need, but my God, wouldn't it have been great to watch an ongoing series, kind of the way that the Lord of the Rings discs had the appendices on them, and they continued those with the Hobbit movies. By the way, the Hobbit special features are amazing as well, in a different way, but they're just amazing to watch. Even if you don't like the Hobbit movies, the team, Michael Pellerin, my old boss, when we all worked together on the original Lord of the Rings discs, I can't speak highly enough about the Hobbit special features. They're great too. But yeah, I really wish, I would love to have spent the last 10 years working on the special features for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I'm very surprised that they haven't. What something to document. How great would it have been seeing the development process of all of these movies and being able to follow what's going on? I mean, I do. I'm tremendously disappointed by the special features on the discs for the MCU. I think it's an incredible missed opportunity, especially because of how successful that they've become. It would have been great to watch. I would have loved to have done like what I do with Superman Returns and make a 3-hour documentary on the making of each film, because it would have been fascinating. I mean, casting all of those people and watching those storylines develop, I really would like to have seen those things. Well, it's time. It's time. As the Time would say, it's time to fix your clock, but it's not. Actually, Prince said it's time to fix your clock, and then he said Vanity 6 is so sweet. But those are Prince lyrics, and those don't belong here. You know what belongs here? Willow Yang, ladies and gentlemen. Willow Yang is going to take us out of this. I mean, I'll still talk to you, but she's the last letter of the day, where she deserves to be. We are going to start featuring Willow's letters on a new section on the Burnettwork.net website that we like to affectionately call Willow Talk. So we're going to put her letters up there. If you want to revisit Willow's letters, please do so, because we are putting them on the Burnettwork.net website. And if you want to send me letters, please send them to me at the Burnettwork.net. Again, I think this week has been a potpourri of amazing letters from all sides of the aisle, and very interesting. And I want to thank you all for sending me these great letters, because they're great. And this, you know what? I'll just get right to it. I know you guys are waiting. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Willow Yang. Greetings, Rob. I'm coming up toward the end of my science conference in Boston. In the spirit of the event, I'd like to discuss the causes of aging and immortality, with reference to the Star Trek episodes Miri, The Apple, and The Deadly Years. Aging is a complicated process that is caused by a host of different factors, many of which are still poorly understood. I will only touch superficially on the molecular side. The DNA damage theory of aging proposes that the degeneracy we experience as we grow older is in part due to the accumulation of mutations in our DNA. This is caused by both external, environmental factors such as radiation, toxins, and pathogens, as well as inherent errors in our cellular replication machinery. The longer we live, the more mutations we accumulate in our DNA, the more dysfunctional our cells become, which manifests itself in the host of negative effects that we experience in old age, including an increase in the risk of cancer. In addition to mutations, we also have the issue of our chromosomes shortening. As a quick aside, for those who aren't familiar with the subject, we carry an enormous amount of DNA that must be condensed in order for it to be able to fit inside our cells. To achieve this, our DNA is wound tightly around special proteins known as histones to form small, tidy packages called chromosomes. Human cells typically carry 2 copies of 23 chromosomes, which collectively form our genome. Without going into details, during cell replication, DNA polymerase, the enzyme that's responsible for duplicating the genome, is unable to synthesize the last segments of our chromosomes. As a consequence, every time our cells divide, our chromosomes get shortened. Now, this would obviously be problematic if we lose DNA that encode any functional proteins. Fortunately, we have evolved to circumvent this problem by acquiring long strands of repeating DNA elements called telomeres. You'll have to correct me. At the ends of our chromosomes. These elements do not encode for anything but are presently solely for the purpose of buffering against the loss of coding DNA during each round of replication. After each cell division, our telomeres get eroded so that eventually, after enough rounds of replication, we will lose them entirely and will no longer be able to prevent the loss of important coding regions of our chromosomes. Thus, our cells have a finite number of turnovers known as the Hayflick limit, after which cell divisions will cease and the old cells will die without producing new replacements. Since the discovery of this phenomenon, people have touted the possibility of extending telomeres as an anti-aging method. This is a bit misleading, however, because with the exception of those suffering from diseases that result in shortened telomeres, humans don't typically die from telomere loss. Rather, we're more susceptible to oxidative stress and other environmental mutagens, which will likely age and kill us long before our telomeres have actually run aging in the population of children, while apparently accelerating aging in adults and causing them to die. The only vague explanation that was provided for this phenomenon is that the children exhibit a reduced production of nucleic acids. Since cells do have a limited number of turnovers, it might seem reasonable to try slowing down DNA replication and cell division in order to slow the aging process. However, this is actually problematic because the synthesis of nucleic acids is also critical for cells to manufacture macromolecules and perform functions that are necessary to sustain life. Moreover, cells are susceptible to wear and tear. They need to replicate and create new replacements, or the body will rapidly degenerate. Finally, the children don't appear to be protected from environmental mutagens and thus will still sustain DNA damage from UV light, free radicals, pathogens, and other harmful agents. In the episode The Apple, we are introduced to a utopian society of natives who worship a mysterious machine that, in addition to providing them with safety and food, enables them to live thousands of years without aging. Assuming that the natives have a biology that's relatively similar to ours, they will experience the same DNA aging processes that we do. Since the machine is able to shield them from harmful radiation, toxins, and pathogens, it is reasonable that damage to their DNA will be minimized, allowing them to have an extended average lifespan. However, the machine will also need to be capable of detecting and carrying out genetic engineering, including the lengthening of telomeres and the repair of mutations caused by the most pristine environment. Caused by inherent error. The lengthening of telomeres and the repair of mutations caused by inherent errors in the cellular replication machinery in order to halt aging altogether. Even in the most pristine environments, a human or anything biologically similar to a human cannot survive beyond limitations that are set by their molecular clock. In the deadly years, the crew are exposed to a mysterious radiation that causes them to rapidly age. There's a small grain of truth to this. Radiation damages DNA, and prolonged exposure to X-rays and UV rays are known to accelerate aging. Radiation also causes a host of additional problems that I don't need to go into, seeing that Chernobyl is currently on HBO. I probably don't need to tell anyone that adrenaline does not offer protection nor reverse the effects of radiation sickness either. That is just absurd. Furthermore, even if the radiation can be neutralized, it will not reverse the damage that has already been done to the cells. Similar to the aforementioned situation in the apple, some extensive molecular engineering must be carried out to repair all of the DNA and other cellular structures that have been destroyed. Kirk and company de-aging instantaneously back to where they were prior to the radiation exposure. That's about as realistic as Kirk being brought back from the dead by an injection of Khan's blood. Fortunately, I'm not one who cares too much about scientific accuracy and entertainment. Yours sincerely, Willow. Well, once again, Willow Yang proves that to hear from Willow is to fall in love with Willow all over again. So, Willow, thank you for that letter. I never thought of Star Trek in such scientific terms before, but you've made me look at one of my great loves in life differently and look back again at these episodes I've seen 100 times each. So I want to thank you for all of that. And let's see, I think, ladies and gents, and all of you great people out there in the Post-Geek Singularity community, I think with that, I will bring this chat to an end. Thank you very much. It's been a very, you know what? This day started out very interestingly early this morning. And this was certainly an interesting chat. Thank you again for all the letters. Please send me more letters at theburnettwork.net. Remember, this chat is brought to you by Lucky Tiger men's grooming products. For those men who want to look good and feel great, you can go to getluckytiger.com, and on checkout, if you buy their products and they're great, punch in PGS for Post-Geek Singularity, and you will get 20% off your order. Also, check out their website, clubluckytiger.com, where they are running a sweepstakes for the summer. You can get free swag. So thank you to Lucky Tiger. I want to thank everybody for participating in both super chats, in the live chat. That is wonderful. I want to thank my moderators. I want to thank Greg. I want to thank Detective Jim. I want to thank Terry. And I want to thank the Honorable Mayor, Mike Bodden of Riverdale, Iowa. And yeah, it's true. My moderators are police detectives and mayors. I have people that are serving their communities here moderating these chats. So be nice to them. They know of what they speak. So thanks to them. Now, and back to you. I want to say to all of you, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. And if I could get you all to subscribe, please please hit the little bell. I really need those likes. They're good for my YouTube analytics. And I've become an obsessive person presiding over my YouTube analytics. And yes, you know what? I'm really thinking about doing this live comic book auction, just because I think it would be fun on Saturday. A lot of people said, do the auction. That's up to you guys. Should I? I don't know. I have so many comic books to get rid of, like 65 long boxes. I don't know. I've got to pick themes. It's going to be rough. I have no idea. But if I did a comic book auction, you'll be able to get steals if you collect comic books. It'll be fun. We'll see. But I want once again, thank you all for being here. And I'm bringing this chat number 145, my God, to a close. And remember, everybody, I want you all to have a better day.